In differential association theory, I should say at the outset here, we're usually applying this toward criminal behavior. Okay, this does not always work well when we're talking about acts of deviance that are not crimes. So having a certain attitude that departs from the commonly accepted attitude of the group, or wearing a outlandish shirt or outfit, things like that, acts of deviance that are not crimes like that aren't always explained too well by differential association theory. In this theory, we're mainly talking about criminal behavior. You see, the key assumption underlying this theory is that criminal behavior is learned. This theory really takes interest in how people learn to not only become criminals, but how people learn to kind of become okay with that. What are the attitudes that people learn? What are the kind of justifications and rationalizations that people who end up getting involved in criminal activity have to kind of reconcile themselves to, the acts of victimizing people and doing things that other people view as low down or scummy or dirty or even immoral, highly dangerous. Like, how do people learn not only the skills to commit these crimes, but how do people learn to carry themselves and act and think like criminals? So the key assumption behind this theory is that criminal behavior is learned. People do not come out of their mother's womb knowing how to break into cars or knowing how to turn powder cocaine into crack cocaine or knowing how to steal people's identity or organize and operate a Ponzi scheme. These are things that people have to learn. My caption for this theory is, well, they got in with a bad crowd. Sometimes you hear that, when somebody gets arrested, or if we hear of a certain public figure or a celebrity maybe being arrested, or maybe arrested multiple times, having finding themselves on the wrong side of the law over the course of a long period of time. There might be explanations provided that people might hypothesize or put forth that, well, they're hanging out with the wrong types of people. They got in with a bad crowd, and that's kind of the way that differential association. I'm simplifying it. I'll get into more detail in a minute here, but that's basically how differential association theory works. Look at that word, association too. That comes from associate. To associate is to have interactions with or to have some type of social connections to someone. You might talk about your associates, the people you interact with, the people you have some type of connection to. Well, this theory looks at how people come to associate with different types of people. You know, People have access to both criminal and non-criminal subcultures, right? Now, the amount of access differs. One individual might only know somebody who sold, bags of marijuana in high school, and that exposure, their association with that person might be the full extent of their access to a criminal subculture or criminality, we could say. Another person might have access to a lot of criminality. Maybe they come from a family in which there are many family members who are all members of a certain gang. And as members of this gang, maybe they produce and distribute methamphetamine. They might sell stolen goods. They might provide illegal loans. But if I'm from a family where uh, many family members belong to a gang and they're involved in various illegal activities, I have a lot of access to a criminal subculture. According to this theory, what matters just as much as the amount of access I have is the kind of access. What is the nature of my relationships with these other people? What is the nature of my associations with these other people? Maybe I'm a member of this family with multiple gang members and they, produce and distribute methamphetamine, they sell stolen goods, they provide illegal loans, so on and so forth. Yeah, I've got a lot of access to this criminal subculture, the subculture of this gang. However, if I'm not on great terms with these people, if my association with them is such that it doesn't leave me, it's such that it doesn't leave me feeling very good about myself, well, I'm probably going to look for other people to associate with. Maybe whenever I'm around these family members, maybe in the backyard, the garage, maybe I get the impression that they don't really want me around. Maybe it's because they don't want that lifestyle for me. Maybe it's because they feel that I'm not really cut out for that. But for whatever reason, I get the impression that these people really don't value me. They don't take me seriously. They don't want me around, that they kind of prefer that I was somewhere else, that I wasn't in the garage with them, that I wasn't in the backyard with them. Well, if I don't feel particularly welcomed by these people, if I don't feel that they're taking interest in me and who I am and what I'm about, the kind of person that I am and want to be, I'm probably, according to this theory, going to look for other people to associate with. Maybe there's a lot of family members who are involved in this game and they do everything that I said that they do. But if members of the school band make me feel more comfortable, more welcomed, more supported, I'm likely going to, my significant others, the people who, I take most seriously, the people who I give the most credence to their feedback, their advice, their recommendations, probably going to be, members of that school band. They validate my self-concept, you know, the way I view myself. It's possible that members of the school band make me feel better about that, make me feel better about the way I view myself, make me feel better about the person I am and the person I'm trying to be than members of my own family, especially if they're kind of turning their back on me, giving me the impression that they don't want me around. On the flip side of this, perhaps I don't have much access to a criminal subculture. Maybe both of my parents are degree holding, respected professionals, but if I want to be seen as a tough guy, if I want to be seen as somebody who you don't really want to violate, if I want to be seen as somebody who's quick to the punch, somebody who, is not afraid to fight, I might seek to associate with people who make me feel like a tough guy, who make me feel like somebody who is, not afraid to fight. Even though my parents, once again, are degree holding, respected professionals, if that's not really the way I want to be seen, if I want to be seen a different way, I want to be seen as somebody who you don't really want to mess with, I want to be seen as this tough guy, well, I'm likely to associate with people who make me feel like a tough guy, make me feel as someone who, knows how to fight, knows how to conduct himself, when things get hairy, when a fight is about to perhaps break out. So what matters just as much as the kind of access people have is the amount of access people have. If I'm seeking to associate with criminals or just people who are involved in crime, well, I'm much more likely, under this theory, to learn, the skills of whatever, the skills, the attitudes, the behaviors of whatever crimes they're involved in. We call that cultural transmission. Cultural transmission is just socialization into a criminal subculture. In cultural transmission, we learn and adopt the attitudes, values, norms, rationalizations, and yes, these crime-aiding skills to fit in to certain criminal subcultures. The differential association theory, in conclusion, pays a lot of attention to who people are associating with and why they're associating with them. What is it about them? How do they see themselves and how do the people they're associating with kind of support or not support this image of themselves? If this image of ourselves is supported by people who are involved in criminal activity, well, we are much likely to associate with those types of people and then undergo this cultural transmission or just this socialization, we could say, into a criminal subculture.